Program, as it's called in the brochure, and we will start with this proposition, is called Grassroots Conservation, and it comes from the state of Montana. A very interesting program with Jim Stone and Jim Nidecker. Is that correct?
Greg Nidecker.
I'm sorry, Greg Nidecker. I got the I was concentrating on the nine, not the Greg.
Good start.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
you bet. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for the opportunity to address you folks today. Being from Montana and a rancher, I have to tell you, it's a little daunting being here at Harvard. We've been working with Greg and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and partners for many years. And one thing I've learned in working with the government is that one must accept and get used to using acronyms. Now, being in the cattle business, we use many of our own. But for the use of today, Greg and I are going to try to tag team a more friendly acronym, and that acronym is TRUST. So we're going to start out, obviously, with T, and in the Blackfoot, T stands for trust. And it is one of the most important things that we do every day is building trust throughout the valley. Now, I got to tell you, agriculture, I think, in general, did not really trust themselves. And this effort that we're doing is building trust amongst ourselves. And when we start doing that, in working with folks like Greg and the Partners for Fish and Wildlife, we start building a lot larger trust and putting stuff on the ground. And when we do that, we bring all the partners together.
From a conservation perspective, about 75% of federal trust species, such as grizzly bears and native fish, depend on private lands for their survival. Without complete trust between private landowners and government agencies, we cannot achieve success in conservation.
R is for respect, and that's what we all would like. And as agriculture, we demand respect, but even more importantly, the communities that we represent, 7 of them in the Blackfoot, they demand respect. And when we do that, when we bring all the partners to the table and do good things, we start to build that respect.
R is also for responsibility. The Blackfoot River Watershed, made famous in the book and movie A River Runs Through It, lies at the southern edge of what we call the Crown of the Continent ecosystem, about a 10 million acre area that includes Glacier National Park and the Bob Marshall Wilderness. The Blackfoot is part of that, 1.5 million acres, as Jim said, 7 communities, about 8,000 people. If we are to meet the responsibilities to the critters of this area, such as grizzly bears and the people of the Blackfoot Valley, we need to respect the role of communities in conservation.
U is for unique, and that's not about a rancher necessarily, but it is about us. And it's about looking that it isn't just about us as a private rancher, but looking at it from a watershed landscape perspective, and that's what we do best. We have what we call the 80-20 rule, which means we work on 80% that we can all agree upon, and we don't get hung up on 20% that we cannot, but we continually strive to deal with that 20%.
The Partners for Fish and Wildlife program is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's private lands program and is active in every state. What makes the Partners program unique in Montana and in the Blackfoot is that instead of randomly working with private landowners, we developed a science-based approach to focus areas, such as the Blackfoot Watershed, to maximize our conservation benefits. We then integrated the focus area approach of the communities that the Blackfoot Challenge has, making this a very unique grassroots conservation organization.
You gentlemen, you're going to have to figure out and be innovative how you can get the S and the T into the Q&A. Oh, you'll get. Oh, she moved. She'll get. Oh, we're sorry. I thought you held the time is up sign it. Did you not?
Last night. Okay.
So how many minutes do we have? Let me just make sure. We have 2 minutes. Yeah. You got 2 minutes for S and T.
Okay. S is for sustainable, and that's where you get real personal with us. We have a 6-year-old son. How are we going to make agriculture, ranching sustainable? That is very important. And the programs at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Partners for Fish and Wildlife, make us very sustainable. We leverage time, expertise, and dollars in making our ranch a better resource. And that is so important.
In order to be sustainable for future generations, we've developed 4 different on-the-ground strategies that include protection, management, restoration, and education. Through programs such as our Conservation Easement Program, we have perpetually protected over 140,000 acres of private lands in the valley. Through our Noxious Weed Program, we're better managing 450,000 acres of our valley floor. To date, we have worked with over 200 individual landowners on over 400 individual habitat restoration projects. Education program, we are reaching all the schools in our watershed. We have over 500 landowners, over 160 partners involved in our programs. This approach has led to a reduction of about 350% in grizzly bear conflicts. And bull trout, a threatened species, has seen an 800% increase in the Blackfoot watershed.
T is for transferable. How do we get this to the next generation? This is about coming up and going out and visiting people, which we do across the country, and explaining what we have in common, what they can do on the ground. The one thing that we have is people. It is all about people.
The Partners for Fish and Wildlife program is in the process of developing a national strategic plan with emphasis on conservation focus areas based on the Blackfoot model. Integrating the grassroots support and accomplishments of the Blackfoot Challenge into the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program focus area approach is, in our opinion, a model that is transferable across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad you didn't choose a longer word, David.
Your application says that you were one of 30 groups invited from across the country to share lessons learned at a White House conference on cooperative conservation. So out of those 30, what makes you unique? What makes you the innovation that should be chosen?
What's unique for me, it is about people and how we transfer this and working together. If we're gonna, from the agriculture standpoint, if we're gonna be successful, we have to partner with people like Greg. And we have to bring all of those entities that are either land stakeholders in the valley, they have to come sit at the table and talk about issues. And when you really bring that, and that's what we do in the Blackfoot, once you've established that, those issues really go away. It's about people pulling.
And the other 29 don't do that?
Well, they very well. I'm not saying I'm an expert at the other 29, but I think what we do, by doing that, we do it very well.
Bill Klinger.
I noticed in your application that some of the more, you might say, harder-edged environmental groups like Sierra Club, et cetera, are not part of the consortium. Is this going to cause a problem in attempting to replicate this program in other areas? Are they going to be supportive, or will they resist an attempt to transplant this the Blackfoot idea into other areas?
That's a very good question. They are involved with our organization at different levels. One of the neat things about the Blackfoot is we try to deal with these problems before they become major issues where we need to have lawsuits and arguments against folks. We always say, if we have a lawsuit in the Blackfoot about timber management or mining or whatever else, we've lost the battle. We didn't do our homework. And so environmental groups really, to date, have not needed to play a big role in the Blackfoot Valley because we tend to get along on most of those issues that we're dealing with.
Okay.
Kathleen?
Actually, I was curious, how did you get along? I mean, you said you're unique in your getting along with one another. I mean, did you start talking to your neighbors, or how did it come about?
It's a long history, and it's before my time, but 30 years ago, a lot of people began to just have that dialogue over resource issues, whether it was the river and the whole movie issue about how they were going to have that interaction. And that's moved ahead, and it's just been generational. But as we started to see good things happen on the ground, it became very apparent that as us that make a living off the land, we were going to continue that we needed to be out there trying to find people to help us do that. And not only just from that communication link, but it's been a huge resource to us that we've been able to apply to our ranch itself, which is, again, it's a wonderful thing to see on the ground.
And if I can butt in here, the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program is one of the few programs in the federal government that is there for the people, for partnerships related to natural resource management. And so I'm hired, that's my job, is to work with Jim, work with the communities, work with landowners. Normally we're hired to just do natural resource stuff, and we forget about that community aspect, and that's critical.
Yes, please.
Jim, I want to go back to your point in reading this. I was impressed with the level of cooperation now, coming from a western state and knowing how zealous landowners are about their property. But the other hand, this was 17 years into birthing. So assuming you and Greg didn't start when you all were 10 years old, at one point, was there a seminal moment when you kind of turned the corner and thought we can make this thing work, and what was that?
Well, I remember it. For me and Jim, it was about in 1991 or 1992, we were at a meeting, And we weren't on the same page. The challenge hadn't formed yet. The Partners Program was new to the area. And Jim essentially said to me, he says, I'd like you to come over to my house and let's just sit down and talk. And we talked. And we built trust and credibility. And the next thing I know, he was taking me around to his neighbors and introducing me to his neighbors, saying, this is a good program. You need to work with these folks. And that to me was a major shift in what we're doing.
All right, other questions here? Yes, David.
The site report says that over 100 miles of a possible 1,900 miles of perennial streams capable of supporting fish have been restored to ecological health. So the site,
Yeah, I'm
We're
having a hard time hearing that with that.
Hold the clock. We got,
the site report says that there are 1,900 miles of streams, perennial streams, and over 100 miles have been restored to ecological health.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take to get the other 1,800?
Well, it's going to take a while, to be quite frank with you. It's taken us 200 years to get our streams in the condition that we're in right now. It's going to take us a long time to get them back, and it's expensive. But in the Blackfoot, we've prioritized all of our tributaries. We've got over 100 tributaries to the Blackfoot River that make up that 1,900 miles. We've worked on 42 of those 100